The first thing I want to do is give you guys notebooks. Everybody gets a reading guide, and this has information about some of your writing assignments. It has questions for you to answer, just like the questions I sent out. I emailed to you and I had you read a little from the Dorothy Mills book before the first class. But they're all here together, and you've got slots for papers that you're bringing me back and forth. And so each week I would like you to, as you're reading the Dorothy Mills book, have your notebook out and just answer the questions as you go through, because it's really, really hard sometimes. Do you ever read something and you have no idea what you read? Can we just be honest? Because I do it all the time. I honestly do. But when you write things down, it just seems to stick better. There's a Roman proverb, I won't say it in Latin though, he who writes learns twice. And so that's kind of the reason. I've pointed out some of the things that I feel are the most important things for us to remember. And then we'll have something to talk about. Because if you come and I say, what did so-and-so do about this? And you just will look at me. But you won't, because you'll have the answer written down. So everybody gets one of these. Why don't you take one and pass it to the next person? And then I needed to use names. You are Elliot. Elliot, you take one and pass around. And could you take one home for Amelia? Yeah. Just take hers as well. And in the very back of the book, the very last page, I would like you to turn there. And it is our prayer before study. I'd like to do this every week before we get started. And, you know, if I asked you why you're here, you probably might say because your mom made you come. Maybe, if I'm lucky, you might say because I really like history and reading. Good. But the real reason we're here is because your job right now is to be a student. That's your calling. And the Bible says that we're supposed to live out whatever God has called us to do and do it with all our hearts like we're doing it for Him. And, you know, you don't know what you might grow up and what you might learn today. And 20 years from now, you might find out, oh my goodness, that's just the thing I needed to know. So I like just to open every time and just devote it to God, because He's the real reason we're here. We're here to learn about history and literature and hopefully to have a good time. But we're also here to do what God wants us to do. So I'm just going to read this out loud. You can follow along. You can read out loud with me if you want to, but you don't have to. Christ my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom in learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work, for to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. All right. If you have the questions that I sent out to you, why don't you get those out? And if you forget something sometime, I always tell all my students, there will be no beatings. No one is ever beaten. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and no one has ever been beaten yet because they didn't. Because sometimes it's me that didn't bring something. One time I forgot my purse at home, and not only did I not have my wallet, so I couldn't run any of my errands, but I didn't have my glasses, so I couldn't see any of the stuff that I was reading. And right now, I have actually misplaced a paper. So you guys will have to wait for me, because I have a paper where oh, they're still there, aren't they? Yes. I have a feeling one of them is what I need. Thank you. Well, this is interesting. What a way to start my first class. Well, you know what we're going to do? You guys are going to help me out. You're going to read the questions for me. Oh, you were just saved. I now have the questions. All right. Now, since I guess none of you took my class last year this class talked about Greece and Rome. Do you guys know something about the Roman Empire, would you say? I have a map here. Everything in yellow was at some point part of the Roman Empire. It's pretty big. It's pretty big. Now, is there a Roman Empire today? There's not. All these yellow parts are other countries now. So that's really the first question I asked you from your reading. What caused the downfall of Rome? Why is there no Roman Empire anymore? What did you guys find in your reading? How did you answer that question? And you don't have to raise your hand, but you can. I know, everybody's got something written on your page, but you're afraid. Go for it, Elliot.
Invasion of the German tribes?
Yes. Invaders. Do you see Germania? Here, I can see through the map. Germania. Those Germans, they're not yellow, are they? No, they never were yellow. They fought the Romans, and they never got conquered. But they had a problem too, because there were other guys over here that kept moving this way. And then the people who lived here moved to get out of their way. And then the people who lived here started pouring into the Roman Empire. And it just happened over and over and over till we get to the Huns that we've got another question about in a minute. And nobody wanted to be in their way because they were bad news. So all of these Germanic, we call them Germanic because they're all kind of related to each other. They all poured into the empire. And the empire didn't have enough soldiers to keep them out anymore, for various reasons. This is the next question too. What was the reaction throughout the Roman Empire when Alaric the Goth pillaged Rome in 410? What did everyone think of that? Just a second. Sean? No, Gus.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Everyone was stupefied.
I like that word, stupefied. Everyone was stupefied. In fact, we read, Dorothy Mills tells us, that Jerome was the guy who translated the Bible into Latin. I actually have one here. He translated the Bible into Latin. They call it the Vulgate. And he said, the city which had taken all the world was itself taken. The Roman world is falling. And you know what, guys? He didn't just mean the Roman world is falling. He meant the world is falling. Because for them, it was the world, the whole world. They thought it was the end of the world. I'm not joking. The early Christians said that Jesus is coming back very soon because this is awful. This is how bad it is. So everything fell apart. Can you just imagine they didn't wake up one morning and everything was suddenly changed, but imagine if there were a time when there's no United States anymore. Is it hard to imagine? It's hard for me to imagine because we kind of think, well, everything will go on like it has, but there wasn't always the United States of America. They had a start, and the Roman Empire was around for a lot of years, and then it fell apart. So they thought the world must be ending because my whole world is Rome. The Huns came over. The aforementioned Huns. Have we all heard of Attila the Hun? Is that a name kind of familiar? Maybe. He was not a nice guy to be around, depending on who you ask. We have two descriptions, and it's very funny. One Roman described Attila, and he said, he's a total barbarian. He never takes a shower and eats his food raw. He said He said they warm up their meat by sitting on it. I can't make this up. And then they eat it, and they wear clothes stitched together from mouse skins. How many mice does it take to make? I want to know. And that's one story. And then another guy who actually went and visited Attila, he told a story. Well, Attila welcomed us in, and we sat down on the couch, and he brought us wine and golden goblets, and like, these can't both be true. These can't both be true. So it depends on who you ask. But Attila approached Rome. And I didn't ask you this question, but does anybody know who went out to have a chat with Attila to say, "What's up, Attila? Why are you attacking Rome?" Was it the Roman emperor? You would think it would be the Roman emperor. That would make sense, but
The bishop, I think.
it was the Bishop of Rome. We call the Pope. Pope Leo, Bishop of Rome. Why would the church bishop go out and talk to some invader? Why not the emperor? Why not the government? Wouldn't it make more sense if the government went out or the army went out and met him? Why would the government and the army not go out? I'll give you a hint. People pouring in, people pouring in. What's happened?
The empire was weak, and the church basically took over the leaders.
There was no one else to do it. There was no one else to do it. So the bishop of the church says, well, I guess somebody's got to go out there and deal with it. Because we can't just sit here and let him sack Rome. And so he did. It's the strangest story. Leo went out wearing all his vestments, his bishop vestments, and he went up and he and Attila just talked to each other, and nobody knows what they said. But Attila turned around and left. Some people say, well, obviously he just paid him money. That's kind of a cynical way to look at it, but maybe. Some people say, well, he was overawed by the power of God and he just left. No. But the interesting thing is, there was just no one else to do it. So the government falls apart and the church gets stronger and stronger, and you glance down, because that's really the next question I asked you, isn't it? Why did the church get more powerful? In the 4th and 5th centuries, let's stop and talk about that for a minute. What years are in the 4th century? What would the numbers of those years be?
300.
300s. From 300 to 399. I'm sorry, you cannot see the board, can you? We're gonna have to. I will wiggle around with our setup here and see. I want to make sure everybody can see. Why would we call those the 4th century, even though they start with the 3? That seems very difficult, making it more difficult than it needs to be.
The first century was 0 to 100.
Yeah, because the 1st century was 0. There's no real. We'll start with say 1. 1 to 99 is the 1st century, but you see it doesn't have a hundreds. It's got an empty spot. So then the 2nd century is 100 to 199. So the rule of centuries is whenever you see that number, it's the years that are one below that. Just like we say we're in the 21st century now, but our years start with 20. Does that make sense? So when it says the church got stronger in the 4th and 5th centuries, it means the 300s and 400s. All right, so we have no more Roman Empire. We have a guy who's a German guy named Theodoric. And he's kind of calling himself the king of Italy. But he's got a boss. He's actually got a boss. And his boss lives in, oh, it's right in the middle. It's hard for me to, oh, I can usually see through. Is that Constantinople? Yeah. Oh, yeah, okay. All right, lives in Constantinople, way over there. Some of you, but does anybody know, or would you like to tell the story of why it's called Constantinople? Or why there's a big city over there? Yeah.
Because there's an emperor of Rome called Constantine,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like a Christian emperor, and he made his own city on the Black Sea there, and made it the capital.
Yeah. And called it after himself, Constantinople. There was a smaller city there. It was a Greek colony called Byzantium. And so we call it the Byzantine Empire because Constantinopolitan Empire is just way too hard to say. Nobody wants to say that. Byzantine Empire. But it wasn't Byzantium anymore. And you know what? There was still a Roman emperor over there. We always say the Roman Empire fell. It's not really true. There was a Roman emperor in Constantinople until 1453. Does the year 1492 ring a bell for anyone? Did something important happen in 1492? What happened in 1492?
Christopher Columbus.
Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492. And so 40 years after there was no Roman Empire, there was Columbus. There's only 40 years between. When Columbus was a little boy, there was still a Roman emperor. This kind of makes my head feel like it wants to explode. It's so, because I always think of the Roman Empire very long ago. So this Theodoric German guy, his boss was the emperor in Constantinople, but he didn't care. He did whatever he wanted because he figured his boss was pretty far away and what to going to do about it anyway. And so the East and West kind of drifted apart. Next week we're going to talk about that East a little bit. We'll get back to that in a minute. But today we'll stick with the West. So all of these places that used to be yellow, they spoke Latin. They were Roman. Even up in Britain, they were Romans. And so when the church started spreading, it was easy for it to spread because they all had something in common. They had a common language. Even though the empire was kind of starting to fall apart around the edges, in the early church, when Paul was writing Acts, when we read the book of Acts, Rome was really safe. I mean, the Roman Empire. Good roads and everybody, they were guarded by soldiers and everybody was pretty safe. So the Christianity spread. But there is a place way over here that's not yellow. Hibernia. Does anybody know what we call that island today? What is that island? It's Ireland. And to make life very difficult for us, the people who lived in Ireland are the Scotti. Like not Scotland? No. The Scotti are the Irish because Scotti means pirates, basically, which tells you a lot about the Scotti. And they pillaged around and then they moved there. They called it Scotland, where the Scotti are. Ireland had never been Christianized, but Britain had. But the problem is, in Britain, this group called the Anglo-Saxons came in, and they weren't Christians, and then the people who had been Christians, everybody's kind of, that Christianity thing, we don't really listen to that. This is by the year 400-ish. And there was a young man that you read about. He was living in Britain, and those sturdy Scotti, the Irish, came and they just kidnapped him. They just flat out kidnapped him along with some other people and just took him home and said, now you're our slave. This isn't very fair. Does anybody have an inkling of what young man you read about that I'm talking about? Is anybody other than Eliot? What? Eliot, right? St. Patrick. Patrick. He was just a kid. And he ended up in Ireland, a slave. He thought, man, I wish I'd listened to my parents and my grandparents more about this whole Christianity and God thing, because I really could use some help. I'm going to try to pray. I'm just going to pray to that God that I learned about, and he did. And he just felt so peaceful. And then one night he was sleeping and he heard a voice say, get up, your ship's ready. All right. He was 100 miles from the coast. He didn't know where, so he just got up and he started walking. And he found a ship and he said, hey, can I get on your ship? And they, no. You're probably just a runaway slave. Which was true. He said, oh. And he turned around and he started walking away, and the sailors changed their minds. They said, oh, come on. You seem harmless enough. Come on, we'll give you a ride. Well, they weren't going to his home in Britain. They were going to the coast here in Germania. And what's France, this northern coast. They landed there, and there's nothing to eat. They're running out of food. They said, hey, Patrick, let's deal with this God. You say you got this God? We could use some food. Why don't you pray to this God? I said, okay, well, God, please send us some food. And this herd of wild pigs just runs through. And they grab a few and barbecue them. I said, Patrick, you're all right. Finally, Patrick got home. And I don't know about you, but if I'd been kidnapped and enslaved and then taken to Germany, and I just want to stay home. But he felt like God was talking to him. Patrick, you know those Scotty? They don't know me. They don't know God. Somebody's got to go tell them. So Patrick's parents were not real wild about it when he said, you know what, I'm going to go back to that place where I got kidnapped and enslaved. What? Patrick went and lived the rest of his life among the Irish. We are going to have a writing assignment this week that it's going to, later, about half an hour, 40 minutes from now, we're going to take a look back at a story about St. Patrick. So St. Patrick was giving the good news about Jesus to the Irish. But I told you in the meantime, the church in Britain wasn't doing very well. So this was the next question I asked you. How did Pope Gregory the Great become determined to send missionaries to England? Why in the world would a guy in Rome say, hey, let's send some missionaries all the way to Britain? Don't be afraid. If you wrote an answer down, you can share it. Go ahead, do it.
After seeing light-haired slave boys in Rome, Gregory was determined to send missionaries to Angles in England and make them Christian.
That's an excellent answer. The Angles were a Germanic group. That's sometimes we call the British an Anglo-Saxon group. Angles and Saxons are groups of Germans that invaded for reasons that we'll talk about when we read about King Arthur later. And a couple of them got captured, a couple of these Angles, and brought to Rome and put into the slave market. Because the Romans had slaves. And anybody they captured and caught, they just put them up for sale. And there were these Angles. And so this is a story told about Gregory. He wasn't the Pope. He wasn't the Bishop of Rome yet. He was just a young monk living in Rome, and he never knew he was going to be Pope someday. He just was walking through the marketplace, and he saw these poor guys for sale, and there were these group, and he asked somebody, who are those people? And he said, he was told they're the Angles. And do you remember what the Pope said? What Gregory, he wasn't Pope yet. What did he say they should be?
Angles, the angels.
Yeah, they're not Angles. They look like angels. And this started a series. I'm going to tell you the whole story because I love it so much. It makes a bunch of puns in English, jokes in English. It makes jokes in the original languages too, so it's convenient. And he asks, well, where are they from? Where's their home? And Britain wasn't just one country then, it had sections. And they said, Daira. Daira is the province they're from. And Gregory said, oh, those people from Daira, I want to save them de ira, which means in Latin, from wrath, from the wrath of God. I want to save them from wrath, de ira. So, who's their king? Aielli. Aielli is the name of their king. And he said, oh, I want to make the subjects of Aiele say Alleluia. So when he got to be Pope, he had the ability to get a missionary expedition going. He said, we're going to go turn those angles into angels. And he picked a guy named Augustine. Now, there are two really famous Augustines, and one of them wrote a lot of books, and this is not that Augustine. Other Augustine. St. Augustine, and he said, you take these guys, so they didn't sail all the way there. Because if you didn't have to, you didn't want to sail out here. You don't know what's going to happen once you sail out here. This is a little dicey. So what we do is we just travel overland, and then we get on a boat here, and it's a very short trip. So they were coming along, and they got about halfway, and they started to have really second thoughts about this whole thing. These Angles and Saxons, what if they're not very nice? What if they don't like us? What if they're mean to us? Are you sure this is what we should do? And Augustine turned around. He said, you guys wait here. I'm going to just double check. Are we really supposed to do this? So he went all the way back to Rome. And he said, Gregory, are you sure this is okay? Yes. You've got God with you. Go, you'll never be alone. This is your task. Go do it. So they crossed the English Channel, and they stopped at an island just off the coast. They were very polite, and they didn't want to just barge in. They wanted to ask the king for permission. I think his name was Ethelred. He was an Ethel something. And so they waited on the island, and they sent him a message, and they said, we would like to talk to the king. So he came to the island, and he said, well, what do you have to say? They said, well, we have a God, and we want to tell your people about our God. They said, well, let me hear about it. And the king listened, and he said, well, I don't know. I'm not personally going to follow your God, but if you want to come tell my people about it, I have no problem with that. And that was the kind of the restart of the church in Britain. Not everybody was polite about it, though. Not everybody was polite. Britain and Ireland sent out missionaries all over Northern Europe. And one of them was named Boniface. And this is the next question I asked you. Boniface had a little different M.O. He didn't, may I please talk about my God? What did Boniface do to show the people that his God was the true God? Does anybody remember? What did he do, Gianna?
He started cutting down the oak of Job, which I believe they worshipped. And God split it into 4 parts.
Yes. And so they didn't really worship Job, which is Jupiter, Zeus. Roman authors have a tendency to call everyone else's gods by their own names. It's the guy we would call Thor. It was Thor, but they always say, "Oh, this is what they call this is their Zeus. This is their." It was the oak of Thor, and Thor has the hammer, we know. And St. Boniface said, "Well, if Thor's really a god, I guess he can take care of himself. And if I'm chopping down his tree, he can whop me with his hammer." So he starts chopping down the tree, and like Gianna said, it just disintegrated into 4 big chunks, and he didn't get whopped with the hammer. And everybody said, "Oh, I guess maybe Thor isn't all he's cracked up to be." And so, little by little by little, Christianity spreads. Now, the Roman Empire has fallen apart, and it's getting close to the year 500. And the gospel is spreading, but people they don't have schools. They're just getting by. But we need to do something to keep civilization together. And so there were groups of people who banded together, and they devoted themselves to God and to just working to rebuild civilization. Do you know, what do we call a group of men? Women can do it too, but men that just band together and they say, we're not going to get married. We're just going to devote our lives to God, and we're going to all live together. The monks. They built monasteries. And we're going to talk later in the year more about these monasteries, all right? But the next question, this is the last question I asked you. Who was the founder of the most widely followed rule of monasteries in the West? Who started monasteries in the West? Saint Benedict. Benedict. You probably heard of him. Here, Saint Benedict's life is a really good example of what's going on in the West. Benedict was college age, we'll say. And if you wanted a good job, you went to college, kind of like today. And the best place you could go to college, like the Ivy League school, was Rome. So his parents just sent Benedict to Rome to go to college. So he went to Rome. Rome stinks, said Benedict. These people have no morals whatsoever. It's a party school. Maybe some parents know. This is Carbondale. This is SIU. I have come to SIU. All right. This doesn't mean anything to you guys, but it does to them. What am I doing here? This is a waste. And so he just said, I'm out of here. He dropped out of school, and he went up on a Monte Cassino, a nearby mountain, not like the Rockies mountain hill, all right, and he's just kind of living in a cave by himself. And finally, word gets out that Benedict is this holy, good man, and people start visiting him. Well, that's just what he didn't want to happen. I wanted to be left alone. Just people kept coming. And I said, Benedict, how can we be better people? How can we be better Christians? And finally, Benedict said, okay, apparently I have enough people that want to follow this life with me. Maybe we should just, I don't know, build a big house and live and study together, and we can grow food, and we can feed the poor with it, and we can help people, and we can pray, and we can help rebuild this world that's become a mess. And some of us can work at copying down the books before they're all lost. Because guys like Attila, the Vandals were a very good example of this. Does anybody know what a vandal is? What is vandalizing?
Like destroying something.
Just, yeah. Ruining stuff, destroying it, just for the fun. So the people that spray paint stuff, they're vandals, right? If you go and, I don't know, don't ever do any of these things. You knock down mailboxes with baseball bats or whatever. They're vandals. They're vandals. You just destroy things because you think it's fun. Well, vandals are called vandals. They're named after a group of people, and I bet you can guess what that group of people was known for. They just ruined stuff. They're terrible. It was awful. Nothing, they just ruined it. So, one of the things they were ruining is books. So, my high school students are getting ready to read an epic poem called the Iliad. And it would be gone. It would be gone if there weren't these men in rooms by candlelight, because you know there's no electric lights. You got to be careful with the candles around books, right? Copying everything out by hand because there's no printing press. Copying and copying. We owe tons of the books we have to monks sitting in some little room in Ireland in the cold with his hands about froze with a fire copying down a book so that we have it. We'll talk about this later, but sometimes they wrote little notes in the margins to themselves, and we have those too. One guy wrote a cute little poem. We'll read that later this year in the margin. So the church stepped up when Attila came and said, go away. We don't want the Huns here, and somehow got him to go away. The church grew food for the people who were devastated because they'd lost everything they had. The church started schools so that people could have an education. They copied down books. They saved civilization until things could be put back together again. And that's where we're going to start our year, with them putting things back together. Now, often, even in our book, call this the Middle Ages. But if you call something the middle, what do you assume? If there's a middle, what else is there? A beginning and an end. Something's only the middle if something comes before and something comes after. Does that make sense? So why do you think they call this time the Middle Ages? What's it the middle of? Never really thought about it. Just that's what it is. Well, what have we been talking about? What came before? I'm pointing down. What came before the Middle Ages? The Romans, the Greeks and the Romans. And then we have the middle. And what comes after the middle? What comes after the middle? The ancient world and the middle and the modern. Us. Now, if you read something written 500 years ago, like Shakespeare, have you ever read a Shakespeare play? This year we will read a Shakespeare play. Oh, don't be afraid. We'll read Macbeth. He kills a bunch of people. The gentlemen always love it. It's very exciting. We'll walk you through it. But it doesn't sound like us talking. But it's modern English. It's us. Now, the ancient world, yay, we love Rome. The modern world, we're so smart. The middle. The middle. What does that make it sound like? What does that make the Middle Ages sound like? If we just lump that whole period. It's 1,000 years. It's the middle. Does it sound like a glorious time? It's like an amazing time where they had all sorts of discoveries and great. It sounds very meh. Yeah. It doesn't even get its own name. It just gets called the middle. That doesn't seem right. More and more people, we try to call it medieval times, right? But it still kind of means the middle. So I want us to explore together this year. Should we just call it the middle? Is it just kind of, hopefully not if we're going to spend a whole school year there. I hope it's more exciting than just middle sounds. It doesn't sound exciting at all. I think you will find it will be more exciting than just the middle. But that's what we're going to explore. And, I wanted to show you something else in your books, which I should have shown you. I'm showing you out of order. There's some other stuff in the back of your book besides the prayer, and I have some maps back there. So could everybody turn to page 81? This will kind of put everything in perspective. You look at that map, and I will hold this map up, okay? So what was once all the Roman Empire is now broken up into all those little sections. The Vandals in North Africa, see the Vandals? They made it all the way down there and vandalized North Africa. And all sorts of Goths, Visigoths and Ostrogoths and Franks, and they've all taken a little chunk. But can you look over in the east? So I hope this isn't a silly question. Is the east on the left side or the right side? Oh, it's on the right side. It's on the right side. You never know. Sometimes people know and sometimes people don't. Generally, when you look at a map, this is the first thing to learn about me is I always lose my marker. Usually the directions are north is at the top and south is at the bottom, and west is here and east is here. And if you have trouble remembering this, I just always picture the United States, and I think about where the Wild West is. Out there, the Rocky Mountain, Wild West, and all the cowboys. And then I can remember, if I'm looking at the United States, that's the Wild West. So the other side must be east. So in the east, do you see the section? It's got diagonal lines. Here, I've got a bigger one here. And it says Eastern Roman Empire. You see that? It's pretty big, isn't it? And in fact, the whole thing isn't even on the map. It swoops all the way around, part of Africa. What, does anybody know what country, what things are here on this end of the Mediterranean Sea? Israel. Egypt and Israel, all the way up here. This country today is called Turkey. This is that Byzantine Empire that we were talking about, where there's still an emperor. So they've got it holding together. It's very lavish. They've got palaces and royal courts, and then over here they're just scraping together to get by. But the guy in charge in Italy is supposedly answering to the emperor, even though he's not. Well, here's why I want to point this out. In a few weeks, we're going to read about what happens to a big chunk of this Byzantine Empire. And just to give you a hint, somebody's going to take it over. Big time. And, okay, before I go there, because I forgot, you're all new to my class. See, everybody in my earlier class, all but one, had all taken my classes, and sometimes I just say things because I'm like, y'all know, but you guys don't know. Every week, you're going to have 3 assignments for me, okay? You do not have to write this down, but I will write it down. When I want you to write something down, I will say, please write this down, okay? Every week, you will read from the Dorothy Mills book. That book of the Middle Ages, or in the second semester, the book of the Renaissance and Reformation times. And in your reading guide, you will have questions, just like the ones that I sent you. So this week's questions, if we turn to the front, it's got a table of contents, and you'll see week 1, and it says Book of the Middle Ages, Chapter 3. That will be your assignment. You will read the Book of the Middle Ages, Chapter 3, and then you will answer these questions. Easy enough. I also send your moms an email after class every week. And I say, well, this is what we did, this is what I collected, this is the assignments. And if you want to get those emails too, just ask your mom for my email address and send me an email and say, put me on the list, and then you'll get them too. All right? But right now, they just go to your mom. So you'll always have a reading from that book. The second thing you'll have is a reading from some other book that has to do with the times we're learning about. The first book we're going to read together is The Arabian Nights. There are 1,001 of them, and I will tell you why in a minute, but there are not 1,001 of them in this book. There's a few of them. These are stories written by those people that are going to take over a big whopping part of the Byzantine Empire. For next week, I want you to read, and you can write this down. And when I say write it down, you've got extra spaces. You can write it on here. It's not true this week because we have something on the next page, but you can write it. How the next page has a big empty place. You can just write down assignments on the back of the page. Or you can use notebook paper. If you want me to give you notebook paper, I will give you some. But you're going to read The Arabian Nights. So next week is chapter 3. That's in your book. Arabian Nights. Now, don't freak out. Pages 15 to 109. You're like, oh, I'm freaking out already. There's so many pages. Wait, first of all, there are pictures. See, there are pictures. There's another picture. There's a whole page. Second, oh, see, there's pictures. It's not a very big book. It's not hard to understand. But here's what you do. All right, I have to read. Can we just make it easy and call it 100 pages? It's less than 100 pages. If it was 15 to 115, it would be 100, but I'm lazy, and so I'm going to say 100. Now I'm going to be you. Oh, no. Mrs. Ferguson wants me to read 100 pages of the Arabian Nights. Oh, okay. Here's what I want. I want to only read for 4 days because I don't want to read on the weekends because I've got better things to do. And I came to class today, for crying out loud. Do I have to come to class and read? So I only want to read for 4 days. So I got 100 pages, and I'm going to divide it over 4 days. How many pages do I need to read every day? Now, what happens if I don't read any pages the first 3 days? You have to just stop eating and sleeping and everything. By the way, do not ever do that. Just come and say, Mrs. Ferguson, I didn't get it done. And again, no beatings, right? But if you want to read for 5 days, if you say, I don't know, this weird genie guy on the front. Oh, I'm looking at some of these pictures and it looks pretty cool. I think I do want to read on Thursdays. How many pages do I have to read every day? 20, you see. If you're bored on a Saturday and you decide you want to read, you can read even less. That's what you do. Read a little bit every day, and if you're not sure how much you need to read, decide how many days you want to read, and just divide it by the number of pages. Now, it's less than 100 pages, so you wouldn't have to read that much. Does that make sense to you guys? And then you won't ever, oh my gosh, Mrs. Ferguson, I read 2 pages. What were you doing? Nothing, obviously, okay? So it's not, and I guarantee, sitting down and reading 20 or 25 pages of this book is not going to be hard in a day. Now, let me tell you a little bit about this book, and then I will briefly tell you our third thing that we're going to do. When are we supposed to be done? We're supposed to be done at 2. Okay, we're good. In this book, this is the story. This is actually in the introduction, but sometimes people forget to read the introduction. Forget or just overlook. Once upon a time, there was a king of these Persian people who have taken over the Byzantine Empire. And he had a lovely wife until he found out she was just a dirty, rotten scoundrel. She was a total rotter, and she was lying to him constantly. And so he just had her head cut off because we can't put up with that. And he said, you know what? I think every woman is a dirty, rotten scoundrel. So here's what I'm going to do. Every day I'm going to get married, and then the next morning I'm going to have her executed, and then I'll get married to somebody else every day. And we'll thin out the whole population of women. So this went on for a while. Of course, nobody wants to be the next wife for obvious reasons. Now, they called the basically prime minister or vice president the grand vizier, right? That's his title. And the grand vizier had a daughter. And she said, Dad, I got an idea. I want to be the next wife. What are you, nuts? I'm in charge of the executing. I will have to I will have to have you executed the next day. He's like, no, I got an idea. I got this. Just tell him I want to be the next wife. Okay, whatever. So he goes to the king and he says, my daughter, Scheherazade is her name. Scheherazade wants to be the next wife. And the king says, you do know what happens tomorrow, right? Like, yeah, I know. All right. So Scheherazade goes to her sister and says, here's what you're going to do. I want you to go to the king and say, oh, king, you know, I know my sister's going to die tomorrow because she's the next wife and everything. It's next to be sad. So I'd really just like to spend the night there with you guys, just have a little slumber party, sleepover, and then, you know, so I can say my last goodbyes. And she said, he'll let you do it. And then here's what you do. About an hour before sunrise, you wake up and you say, oh, sister, I remember when we were little girls and you used to tell me such good stories. Will you tell me one of your stories? Because this is the very last time I'll get to hear one of your stories. You know, you're going to die. And the king will let you. So they do this. Sister wakes up. Oh, sister, please tell me a story. Sure. So she starts telling the story, and it goes on and on and on. All this weird stuff's happening. And finally she says, oh, but dear me, it looks like the sun is coming up, and you know, I guess it's time for me to be executed, and I can't really finish the story. And the king, he wanted to know what was going to happen next. He said, well, I guess you can live today. And you can finish the story tonight. So the next night, she finishes the story, but she starts a new story. And then, oh, but look at the time. Shoot, I want to hear this story too. Well, all right, you can live again. And this goes on for 1,001 nights, which, if you do the math quickly, is 3 years-ish. And then finally, he got to like her so much, he just kept her. That's the story of the Arabian Nights. Do you believe this really happened? Is there any reason it couldn't happen? There's no reason it couldn't happen. I have my doubts. You guys can decide for yourselves. However, the stories we're going to read, I find them very hard to believe. We'll just say. Some of the stories you're going to read are very, very famous and well known. Maybe you've heard of Sinbad the Sailor. If not, you're in for a treat, because Sinbad has all sorts of adventures. Maybe you've heard of Aladdin and his lamp. He's in here too. These are the stories of the 1,001 Nights. So I want you to read the first 100-ish pages, but there are pictures. And then maybe you will be like the king, and you'll read your 20 or 25 pages, and you'll say, yeah, but I want to know how the story ends. And maybe you'll end up reading more than your quota, and you'll get done early. Maybe. Okay. So that's the second thing we'll do every week. We'll read out about history. We'll read about some period of history. We'll read out of a book. The first one's going to be Arabian Nights. The last thing is we're going to write something. And we're going to write something that has to do with what we're learning. And I would like everybody to turn in your reading guide to page 2. I told you we were going to revisit St. Patrick and the Scotty. And now is the time we're going to do this. Okay, I want to make sure that Amelia can see this. Now, how many of you guys would say you like to write? You actively really enjoy writing? That is a resounding no. Okay, so if we're all on the same page about writing, what makes writing hard? What do you not like about writing? Or what's the worst part about it?
My hand hurts.
Oh, you know what? That is a legit complaint. So my hand hurts too. This is why I say this. Now, you're not going to like this, because nobody ever does. But you see, you've got a pen. This was my advice. Use a pen. Pencils, you have to press harder. If you're a person whose hand starts hurting, that's why we have to keep sharpening pencils, right? They get dull, and then you don't realize it, but you're pressing harder and harder and harder into the page to make the line show up. What's the downside of using a pen? Yeah, you can't erase. So what you got to get used to, except when you're doing a final draft, it's all nice and neat for the teacher or your mom. When you're just doing your own scribbles, you just got to get used to just writing, and you write some words and you say, I don't like that, and you just draw a line through it and you write above it. And we don't like that. We like to erase. But you know how you erase and then those bits get everywhere? You know what I mean, the eraser bits, and then pens are good. So unfortunately, I don't have advice for you beyond the using a pen, which it looks like you're already doing. Okay, so sometimes it's physically tiring. What else is bad about writing? Or I shouldn't say bad, difficult, challenging. That's what I want to say. What else is challenging about writing? You've just been assigned a paper. How are you going to start? What's the challenge? I say, write a story. I want you to write a story about the Middle Ages. How many of you would like that assignment? How many of you like to make up stories? Wow. Do you like to write nonfiction? We just don't like to write. Is this, okay, oh, I'm with you. All right. What's hard about it? What do you have to do to write anything? I'm here, I have my pen, I have a paper, it's blank. What do I have to do? I have to think of something and then write it down. I have to have something in my head, and I'm not implying you have nothing in your head. But sometimes it's hard to collect the things that are in our heads, but sometimes you just flat out can't think of anything. Has anyone ever asked you, a relative maybe, a family friend, oh, what did you do this summer? Or what was the best thing about your vacation? And you just kind of go, no, I don't really remember anything about it. I didn't do anything. You got nothing. It's hard to come up with something sometimes. It's really hard to come up with something to say. So here's the gift I'm going to give to you. I'm going to tell you exactly what to say. You don't even have to come up with it. All you got to do is turn it into sentences for me. Is that a deal? You're not going, all you're going to have to think about is what makes a complete sentence. We'll talk about this in a minute. So, on page 2, you see a little story, and on page 3, you see an outline. Does everybody see those? I am going to quickly read the story about St. Patrick and his brothers, and we're going to make an outline together, and you're going to use that outline to write a retelling of this story for me. And you don't even have to think up what to say, although you can add little details if you want to. What is this story? It's called St. Patrick and the Brothers. When Patrick was traveling around Ireland, he came across 2 brothers whose father had died. Instead of being sad about their father's death, they were quarreling over which one of them should now own their father's farm and possessions. At first they shouted at each other, and next they started to fight with their fists. St. Patrick called out to them to stop fighting, but they were too angry to hear him. One of the brothers picked up a large rock, and St. Patrick feared that he might kill the other, and so he called out a prayer. Instantly, both brothers were turned into stone. They could still hear and see, but they couldn't move. St. Patrick explained to them that it was wrong for brothers to fight, and when he turned them back into men, they were so amazed that they settled their differences and were friends forevermore. I'm assuming that your parents never turn you into stone when you're fighting with siblings. Not that you ever would fight with your siblings. Probably never happens at your house. But this would be a very odd thing, and I know some parents that might be happy to be able to turn people into stone. Briefly. All right. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to retell that story. But if we just copy down all those words on another piece of paper, word for word, that's got a name. When we just copy what someone else wrote word for word and then hand it in, do you know it's got a fancy name? Plagiarism. It's called plagiarism. And it's a big no-no. You can't just copy down what other people write and then hand it in like you wrote it. It's actually illegal. However, I have never turned any student into the police. Plagiarism. I have had plagiarism. I've caught plagiarism, but I have not brought in the law as of yet. But what we can do is take what happened in this story and tell it in our own words. And now it's my story. Now it's our story. It's not plagiarism anymore. So on page 3, you have an outline. I want you to ignore name, because you know your name. Date, because I don't really care what today's date is. And source story, because it's the story that's right over there. We're not wondering, okay? So I want to look at where the Roman numeral 1 starts. Now, you don't have to copy this part down, but I don't have the outline. And I don't have enough room, really, to put the whole outline. So I'm just going to put the first section, all right? It's got a Roman numeral 1, and then it's got 4 numbers like this, right? And now, what does it say? What are the 2 words in bold right next to that Roman numeral 1? What does it say?
Character, setting.
Characters and setting. What are characters?
People in the story.
People in the story. Could characters be animals? They could be, couldn't they? Like in Aesop's fables, where the animals talk and they're like animals. I was going to say, could a character be a thing? Because it depends on the thing. Well, that's a philosophical question. We'll have to think about that. But whoever is doing things in the story. What's the setting? What's the setting?
Where the story takes place.
Hmm? It could be where it takes place. It could also be when it takes place. That counts as the setting. So, our first paragraph, it says characters, setting, and then do you see below it says, who are they? What are they like? What is the situation? When does it happen? Where does it happen? What sort of images do you see? What's the mood of the story? Those are all the things we're going to talk about in the first paragraph. And where are we going to get that information? Out of our heads after we read the story. We're just going to ask ourselves questions. So here's an easy question. Who's in the story? Tell me somebody who's in the story.
St. Patrick.
St. Patrick. So, and here's what we're going to try to do, just as a little challenge. We're going to try to only use 3 words. We're not going to write whole sentences, because you know what, frankly, that sounds like a lot of work to me. I got to write a whole sentence on my outline, and then I got to write a whole sentence in my paper. Are you kidding? I just want to write words that will remind me what I was thinking. So St. Patrick, and you know what? We're just going to call St. Patrick one word. We'll just, Saint doesn't need to be its own word. So let's write, now you copy this down on your outline, St. Patrick. Do you want me to turn this a little bit for you, Elliot?
No.
We're just kind of a big group. I wish I just had a whiteboard that covered the whole wall. Or one of those, the paint that you can write with chalk on. Okay, now what is St. Patrick like? Now this story doesn't tell us. But if you heard, I told you stories about St. Patrick earlier. If we wanted to use an adjective to describe St. Patrick, what kind of person is he?
Stubborn.
Why do you think he's stubborn?
He trying so hard to get back to his home.
Oh, yes. So when we call somebody stubborn, is that usually a compliment or not?
It can be.
Can we? Is there something that means stubborn but only can be good? Determined. I like that. Because in this story, he's determined to stop this fight, isn't he? I like it. Let's say St. Patrick, a determined man. He's a determined sort of man. That'll be our second word. And what's he doing? What's he doing in this story when we first see him?
Traveling.
He's traveling. So I'm going to have to put mine below because I've run out of room. But this all goes on one line, okay? So I'll put it kind of underneath. Traveling. I think sometimes people, do they put 1 L or 2? I think both of them are, they put 2. Both of them are acceptable. Okay. St. Patrick, a determined man, is traveling. Okay, since we said he's traveling, maybe we should say where this story takes place. Where is he? He's in Ireland. Now we get to use our imaginations again. Now, if we were writing a paper of like the story of the bombing of Pearl Harbor or something, a historical story, we couldn't just make stuff up. But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of things. I'm not totally sure I know if St. Patrick turned these guys to stone or not. I won't say he didn't. But I feel like we can add details if we want to. What do you picture when I read this story? What does it look like where he's traveling? Is it flat? Is it a meadow? Are there flowers? Are there mountains? Is he in the woods? What do you think? Where would you like him to be? Did you get a picture in your head when I read it? Tell me something about your picture.
Kind of like next to the field or something.
Okay. Well, he's going to encounter 2 brothers that are fighting over a farm and possessions. It's hard to farm in the woods. It's pretty much impossible to farm in the woods, actually. So he's walking through a field, meadow. What do we like? A meadow? A meadow sounds pretty. Is there anything in this meadow? What does he see as he looks around? Oh, he's walking. What does he see in this meadow? He sees flowers in the meadow. It's a meadow filled with flowers. Now, was that in this story? No, I just made it up. We made it up together, but we can do that. That's okay, because we're taking this story and we're going to make it our story. We're going to retell the same plot, but we can embellish it, if you know what I mean. We can decorate it. All right. So we know who is in this story, and we know where he is. When? In other words, would you like this to be the morning? Is it after lunch? Is it getting towards the evening? What kind of day would you like this to happen? You get to choose.
Morning.
In the morning. It's in the morning. One morning. What does he maybe hear? What kind of sounds do you hear in the morning?
Bird.
He hears the bird. What do birds do? Birds tweeting. I like that. That could be. And he hears the birds tweeting. If you want them to be singing. Maybe he's hearing that. That's not quite so pretty, is it? I'm telling you, the chickens are bad, but they have geese. They sound like they're being killed. They just scream. And then every once in a while, one of them goes, "Wah, wah, 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 wah," and I feel like he's laughing at me. It sounds like he's laughing at me. So maybe hopefully his birds are tweeting much more pleasantly. All right. St. Patrick is not the only one who is in this story. Who else is in this story? Two brothers. Hey, you know what? I only get 3 words, and I really hate to use up 2 as one of my words. Is there a way I could say 2 without actually writing a word? TWO. Can I do it a different way so it doesn't count as a word? Yeah. 2 brothers, and I can still have 2 more words. 2 brothers. And tell me about these brothers. Oh, somebody is having an emotional meltdown over there. It is. You know what the tragedy is? Like somebody's in her way. Oh my gosh. 2 brothers. What are these brothers like? What is their personality, or how do they act? They're currently very angry. 2 brothers are angry. Oh. And what are they angry about? All right. They both want it. Is there another adjective that describes people who want stuff? Maybe they want other people's stuff. Greedy. They just want more stuff. They're angry and greedy. And what are they currently doing?
Fighting.
They're fighting. And what are they fighting over? I know you just told me, but remind me. Fighting for what?
Inheritance.
Fighting for inheritance. I'm going to put inheritance is kind of a long word, so I'm going to put mine down here just because. All right. Let's take a look. It tells us who is in this story. It tells us when. It tells us where. That covers character and setting. Now, your job, no, we're going to do the other 2 paragraphs together in a minute. I'm going to have to erase this because I don't have room. But so what you're going to do is take this whole outline home and get a piece of paper. And I want you to put the story away, right? Fold your book so you can't see the story. And all you can see is your outline. And then you're going to get your paper and you say, I'm going to tell this story again. Here's what it might sound like. It doesn't have to sound like this. Here's just my version. Okay, St. Patrick determined traveling. One day, St. Patrick, who was a very determined man, was traveling. Oh, now my eyes just went down. He was traveling through Ireland and he passed by a meadow full of flowers. Okay, that's a sentence. It was morning, and all the birds were tweeting happily because the sun had just come up and they were all looking for their breakfast. In the distance, he heard two angry brothers who were fighting over their inheritance because their dad just died. They were angry and greedy and screaming at the top of their lungs. The end. That's the end of my paragraph. Does that make sense to you guys? Now, did I add some things on the fly? Sure. If something occurs to me and I'm turning this back into a sentence, I go, ooh, I'm going to add that in. I like the way that sounds. Or if I say, oh, maybe I want to do the brothers first. I don't have to do it in this order. Once there were two brothers, and after their dad died, they fought over his inheritance because they were greedy. And they got so angry with each other, they wanted to strangle each other. One morning, as they were screaming, and the birds were tweeting, St. Patrick came along. Since he was traveling through Ireland and looking at the beautiful flowery meadows, he was determined to stop their fighting. See, I can mix it up however I want. It's your story. It's not their story anymore, but it's the same plot. Okay? Got it? All right. Now I'm going to erase. Everybody has this? Okay. I'm just going to take my words away. Now, what does it say the second paragraph is about? What's in bold next to the Roman numeral 2? Conflict. What is the problem? All right. So, listen to the story that I'm going to tell you. It won't be very long. One day, Susie got up, and it was perfect day. It was just the right temperature and humidity level, and it was her birthday. And her mom made her favorite breakfast of, I don't know, bacon and Cheerios. And then all her favorite friends came over, and they played her favorite games all day. And then they had her favorite kind of pizza for lunch, and all her friends gave her all the presents that she wanted, and there was nothing missing that she could possibly want. And then her family went out to her favorite restaurant for dinner, and everything was perfect, and all the food they served was perfect. And then they took a walk in her favorite park, and then she went to bed, and her bed was perfect, and her mom had washed the sheets that day, and everything had that nice fresh smell, and she fell asleep at the end. All right, A, I'm really happy for Susie. But B, is that not just the most boring story ever? Oh my goodness. Something bad needs to happen to Susie. I'm sorry, Susie, but if you want to be in a story, you need to have something bad happen to you. And that's conflict, right? That's what's the problem. Because a story with no problem is just really not worth reading. Now, in life, we'd like our life to be like that, I suppose. I wonder at what point we'd get tired of it. That's a philosophical question for you to ponder. How many perfect days in a row until I just feel like I need something to happen? This is boring. I don't know. But in general, in stories, we need a conflict. Now, sometimes two people are getting into it with each other, right? And that's easy to see. In this story, right, we have people fighting. And I suppose St. Patrick is kind of against them too. What else might you fight against in a story? What other sort of conflict could you have? What could a character have to fight against or overcome? Or what might be trying to stop a character that's not another person? Ooh, like fear. And where would the fear be? Who would be afraid? The character. It's inside him, right? Sometimes the conflict is inside you. I never know whether to use this as an example or not. Do we all know Star Wars? If I use Star Wars allusions? Or is there anybody who would be left out if I use Star Wars? Shelley or Grace? Your mom is Shelley. You were Grace. I know this. Do you know Star Wars? Okay, okay. Let's do a better one. Okay, Goldilocks. Are we all good with Goldilocks and the Three Bears? Okay, all right. So I'm going to have to embellish a little bit here. But, all right, Goldilocks and the bears, obviously, there's some conflict. She's broke into their house, for crying out loud, right? But I would like to think, this is where I embellish, that Goldilocks maybe asked herself, gee, I wonder if I should eat all their food. I wonder if I should sleep in some stranger's bed. So that would be inside her. She would have conflict. Gee, I'm really tired. But it seems a little rude to just crawl in somebody else's bed, especially 3 people's beds, and try them one at a time. That would be a conflict inside yourself. I'm trying to think of another, like a fairy tale where lots of fairy tales have not in your own mind conflict, but outside conflict. I can think of one other thing that might try to stop a character from getting what they want. I'm trying to think of an example. I'm thinking of movies that you probably haven't seen. Is there something that could happen in nature that could make you not get what you want? Can you give me an example of something that could happen in nature that could cause a problem? A storm, an earthquake, a tornado, a volcano, right? Have any of you, actually this is a pretty popular book, it was once upon a time, read Hatchet by Gary Paulson, the book Hatchet? It's about a boy, so he's against nature, right? I mean, there's no earthquake or volcano or anything, but he's got to live. He's crashed, his plane has crashed, and he's out in the wilderness and he has nothing. And he's got to find out what to eat and how to get help and how to take care of himself. That would be a conflict against nature. Does that make sense? But in this case, we have people fighting. So that's kind of easy. So it says, for our conflict, our questions are, what's the conflict? What do they want? What do they need? What do they say? What do they do? Well, let's ask ourselves the question. All right, so we've already said in the first paragraph they're fighting over the inheritance. So we know the situation. But when St. Patrick comes up, what are the brothers doing? What do they do first? You can look at the story. It's okay right now. What are they first doing when he walks up? They're shouting. So the brother, we can have 3 words. Brothers shouting. Would we like to get fancy and say how they're shouting? Would we like to put an adverb in there? They're shouting how? Intensely. Oh. Brothers shouting. I'm not going to risk it. Intensely. When St. Patrick comes up, the brothers are shouting intensely. What do they do next? They're shouting, and then what comes next? Punching. Fist fight. So, do we want punching? Do we like that? Does it say they actually punch each other, or does it just say they're getting ready to? I don't remember. Let's look back.
Fight with their fists.
Then they started to fight with their fists. So how can I say in 3 words, how can I describe that in 3 words? They start to fight with their fists, or they're punching. Give me 3 words. Give me 1 word. What's the most important word? Punching. Punching, fist fight. And what was the second word?
Boxing.
Punching, well, boxing makes it sound a little, how about punching and fist fight? That's what comes next. Punching. Technically, fist fight is a hyphenated 1 word. First, the brothers are intensely shouting, and then that escalates into punching and a fist fight. And what comes next? one of the brothers tries to throw a rock. We need to somehow communicate that idea with 3 words. Before he tries to throw the rock, what does he have to do? He has to pick up rock, right? That's kind of 3 words I just came up with. Pick up rock. Pick up rock. What do we like to describe the rock? Do you think it's a tiny pebble? Mm-mm. No, but it's pick upable, if you know what I mean. It's not so big you couldn't. It's just an enormous rock. What? Large. Wait, picture this rock in your imagination. Is it nice and smooth and pretty? Or if he hits his brother with it, does it have little bits sticking out that might really hurt him? Yeah. What kind of rock? How could we describe a rock like that?
Rough, sharp, jagged.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Rough, sharp, jagged. I love all of those. Take your. I don't even know which one to pick. I like them all. Pick. Okay. I'm going to put jagged rock, but you can put your adjective of choice in there. Okay. If you want to put rough, sharp, ooh, this is one ugly rock. It's terrible. So he picks up the rock, and what's the next thing he's going to do? Throws it. Does he actually throw it? No. So we can't say he throws the rock. What can we say? He positions to do what? He positions himself to throw. Oh, I like that. Oh, the plot is this is very exciting. And poor St. Patrick hasn't shown up in this entire paragraph. Tell me something about how St. Patrick is feeling right now. He's nervous. What else is he?
Fearful.
He's nervous and fearful. I like this. St. Patrick is nervous. Time is over. Okay. And fearful. I try to get done on time, parents. Don't always succeed. Really, really try. All right, this is the conflict. This is the problem. So if we're working on a paper and I'm you, and this is my outline, I'll think, okay, well, because remember where my paragraph stopped before, and St. Patrick came along and he heard 2 brothers shouting, fighting over their inheritance. Okay. As St. Patrick approached, the brothers were shouting each other intensely and calling each other nasty names. I'm going to throw that in because I like the sound of that. When yelling wasn't doing any good, they doubled up their fists and started punching each other in the face. After this went on for a while, one of them thought, I'm going to get you. And he wandered off to the side of the field, and he found the nastiest, most jagged, rough-looking rock he could find. He heaved it up and positioned himself to get ready to hurl it with all his might at his despicable brother. This story was so exciting, it's making things fall down. And St. Patrick, as he watched this unfold, stood there, nervous and fearful that someone was going to get killed. All right. That would make a pretty good paragraph. But does it have to? It kind of does have to happen in that order, doesn't it? It wouldn't make sense to start flinging rocks and just start yelling at somebody. Once you've escalated to rocks, the yelling is done. You can't go back. Once you go to the rocks, you can't go back. All right, so now we've got a 3rd paragraph. What does it say in bold that the 3rd paragraph is about? The resolution. How does it all turn out? This is paragraph 3. How does it all turn out? Because, you know what? Stories like Susie's story are really, really boring, but stories that have where it doesn't work out, that's also kind of depressing. Sometimes stories are like that. Nobody ends up happy in the end, and I don't know if you've read a story like that, but it can kind of leave you feeling yucky. You know, you just. And I think it's because we're not made for stories like that, because, you know, we're in a story, it's God's story, and it has a happy ending. We already know the happy ending, and so we're kind of wired because we know the ending's happy. So those not happy endings leave us depressed. But sometimes on Earth, you know, just on Earth, there's stories that don't have happy ending. This one's happy though. So what are we going to do? We left them in the previous paragraph. St. Patrick is nervous and fearful as he's getting ready to heave the rock. What does St. Patrick do? What? Yes, and how does he do it? What does he do first? He prays. Saint Patrick prays. I'm not even sure we need, you know, I said St. Patrick could be one word. Sometimes we don't need 3 words. Sometimes that pretty much tells us all. And you just told me, somebody, I already can't tell. What did you say happened? Turned to stone. Turned, should turned them stone? Turned brothers stone? Just to make sure we remember. Because, you know, maybe tomorrow we'll have forgotten some of the details. Did he turn, I don't know, those tweeting birds into stone? Who did he turn into stone? We want to make sure we know it was the brothers. Turned brothers, well, I said praise in the present tense, turns brothers stone. Great. And what does he do while they're stone? Does he just look at them? He tells them. So what do we say when you talk to someone and what's he doing? So that's literally what he says. He says, "Do not fight."
Telling them off.
Telling them off. He what does he give them?
A lesson.
He gives them a lesson. I love lesson. Lecture we could call it, but I like lesson. I like it. He gives lesson. Oh. And then you know what? I like the do not fight. I want to put that in there too, because that's the heart of the lesson. What can I do to make sure I remember that that's actually what he said? How can I mark words to say somebody actually said this? Mm-hmm. Quotation marks. Do not fight. And if I put quotation marks around it, it'll remind me that that is actually what he said. Now, I won't get mixed up and think the brothers said that, because the brothers are currently stoned. And they're not saying much of anything. And then what happens?
He turns them back, and they are so amazed that they forgive each other.
Okay, that's a lot of stuff, isn't it, for one line? So they're not stoned anymore, and they're amazed, and they forgive each other. Have you got an idea, Elliot? Oh, okay. Have you guys ever been somewhere where they have a sign, and they don't want you to do something there, like skateboard or ride your bike, and you know there's a picture of somebody doing it, and then there's a circle around it with a line through it? Do you know what I mean? And it means don't do that. So how could I say in one word with a symbol, they're not stone anymore? They were stone, now they're not stone. Watch this. It's like one of those signs. No bike riding. No. I don't know. Sometimes it's kind of hard to figure out in the sign what they're doing. I don't know what you want me to do. They're not stone. And what did we say they did? You said they were amazed. And what did they do to each other? and they forgive. Awesome. And everything turns out well. So sorry, Elliot. So if I had to write this out, all I have to do is turn them back into sentences. Can somebody, let's have you guys try it. Would somebody like to volunteer, this isn't very hard, to turn St. Patrick prays back into a sentence? Anybody brave? It's kind of a trick question. St. Patrick prays. Can you make a sentence out of that?
St. Patrick prays for the fighting brothers.
Yes. The joke is St. Patrick prays is actually a sentence already, right? St. Patrick prays that the brothers will not kill each other, whatever. All right. Can somebody use turns brother's stone and turn that into a sentence so that it's a complete sentence, a complete thought? After St. Patrick prayed, the brothers turned to stone. Beautiful. Gives lesson. How could we turn that back into a sentence?
While in stone, St. Patrick gives a lesson about fighting with the brothers.
Beautiful. This one's kind of a gift. How do we turn do not fight back into a sentence? I can add 2 words to that and make it a sentence. Do not fight, he said. Not stone, amazed, forgive. What would that sentence look like or sound like?
The brothers turned back to human and were amazed and forgave each other.
Beautiful. Hey, did Gianna even use the word stone? No, she didn't. Do you have to? No, you don't. Because we're just taking, this just means they're not stone anymore. However you want to say that. They turned back into human form. It means the same thing. So your job is to take that outline we made and just like we just did, go through and turn them into sentences and retell the story for me. Put little details in. If you want to tell me what St. Patrick is wearing, what color his cloak is, I don't care. Go for it. And if you don't like to write very much and you don't like adding details, just give me the bare bones story and you're done. Your assignment's done, right? Remember that when we start a new paragraph, we indent a little bit. Do you know what I mean by that? So in case you're just not sure, here's examples. Do you see how we have a page of writing and then we have a line that scoots in a little bit? And then we go, and we have another line that scoots in a little bit. That's indenting. So each of these is a paragraph, each of these sections of our outline. So you'll have 3 paragraphs because you have 3 sections on your outline. Does that make sense to everybody? Are you okay with that? So you have 3 things to do. You're going to write this story and bring it to me. You can start reading all these crazy Arabian Nights stories. And I'm telling you, some of them are pretty crazy. I think this week you're going to read my favorite one out of here. And you're going to read about the Byzantine Empire, the Eastern Empire, from Dorothy Mills and answer the questions. And here's what else I want you to do. Your moms have my email. If you ever are having a problem, you don't know what to do, you didn't understand the instructions, you forgot the instructions, just have your mom email me or call me, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. I don't want you to be worried or afraid because I'm just not quite sure what to do here. Just ask, all right? There's not going to be a silly question. I'm not going to laugh at your question, all right? But there'll also be an email. Pretty much as soon as you guys leave, I'm going to hit send because the email's already written, and it has all the assignment on it. And like I said, if you want to get those emails too, if you have your own personal email and you want to give it to me, then I'll give you those emails too, all right? Yeah, any questions at all? Are we good? All right, I know, okay. Elliot, Grace, Riley, Gianna, oh, you guys. Easton. Sean. Oh! Sean and Do not tell me. I will do this. No, I won't. Gus.
Yeah.
I need to just see Liam when I look at you, and then I'll.
His real name is Augustine. That helps you. Look at it.
Like the missionary.
And think of Sean as a traditional Irish name, and he has red hair. That's how it
Thank you. I need y'all to follow me around and give me tips just in my life in general. All right.